My name is Christine Whelan, and I am now the Purpose Professor at Emory University, which is a role that I am so thrilled to have. And before that, for the last 10 years, I was known as the Happiness Professor at UW-Madison. And I taught a class by the name of this webinar for today on consuming happiness, really asking that question of how do we use our limited resources, and we all have limited resources, not just money, but limited resources of time, emotional energy, environmental resources. How do we use those limited resources to maximize both our well-being, our thriving and happiness, and the well-being of others and the world around us? So that's really been something that I have asked for decades myself. And through that, I've really come to these ideas of purpose and meaning, asking those big questions of what matters most to me? Why does it matter? And how can you make it happen in your life? Because obviously, if you don't know what you're looking for in terms of consuming happiness and buying happiness, then even if you buy everything, you're never going to be happy. So here's what I want to do today. I'm going to do sort of three things in three chunks. I first want to talk about this question of what is happiness, because quite frankly, it's a word we use all the time, and yet, as we'll soon see, it has many definitions and it's quite slippery. Then I want to talk about the idea of whether more money really equates with more happiness. And there's a lot of research on that. I'll talk about the research and then how you can test these things out in your life. And then I'll talk about my kind of maybe a little outside the box idea that I believe, in fact, you can buy happiness if you know how to spend your money right. And spoiler alert, that's not on buying more things. So we'll talk about what that really means. And I'm seeing, and when I'm seeing, what will this be available after? Yes, I think and hope so. So the DreamBank folks can chime in about whether the video of this webinar is going to be available afterwards. But I certainly hope so, and I will let them chime in on the chat as well. So the first part is, what is happiness? All right. So you would think that this is a word that we use all the time, potentially every day, and we would know what it means. And yet we have many definitions for the word happiness. So in the chat here, please type in one word when you think of happiness. What is a synonym you think of? What is a word that you equate with happiness? The reason I'm asking you to do this is because, as you're going to see hopefully in a second here, yes, there are many different ideas. We equate happiness with peace, with joy, with contentment, with feeling light and fulfilled, with curiosity, with fun. Now, is joy and peace, are those the same thing? Is bliss and fun the same thing? Is curiosity and contentment and quiet the same thing? No, all of these are really different, and yet all of them are part of the way we think of happiness. So what that means is that happiness is very much an umbrella term. And despite the fact that I was known as the happiness professor for so many years, I have to confess that I kind of hate the word happiness, because since it has so many possible meanings, when we say, oh, I just want to be happy, what we're really doing is skirting on the surface of something that is much deeper. And when we're only on the surface of things, well, it gets harder to actually get what we want because we're not defining it in terms of what we as individuals are actually hoping for. The other challenge with the word happiness is that no matter how much we seek it, there is a very deep truth, which is that the world is a painful place. All of us know this in our own lives, from the Bible and the book of Job to the sort of core tenets of Buddhism. All major religions talk about the idea of suffering and pain in the world. That doesn't mean that there also isn't joy and happiness, but in our quest for happiness, we can never equate the idea of a happy life as a successful life, or as a successful life being only a happy life, because the world is a painful place and there is always going to be a mix of both. In fact, In the chat, one of the words that I'm seeing associated with happiness is acceptance. And that's a really interesting one, especially when we see that the world is a painful place, because the acceptance of that may be part of our own personal definition of happiness. Turns out that Aristotle, all the way back when, talked about happiness, and he defined happiness in two different types. He defined happiness as hedonic happiness and eudaimonic happiness. So hedonic happiness is the kind of happiness maybe we think of more often. It's pleasure, it's satisfaction, it's a really good meal or a really fun party. And hedonic happiness is great. We kind of almost don't have to think about it too much or overanalyze it. We know it when we see it. We're having fun. Life is good. Eudaimonic happiness is a bit different. It's more of that quiet contentment, that sense that we've succeeded and that we are living the good life, that we are living in keeping with our values, that perhaps we've made some sacrifices of our hedonic happiness along the way, but that we're investing in what matters to us. And so in recent years, what we've sort of heard is that we really should all focus on eudaimonic happiness. And there's some truth to that. Eudaimonic happiness is the idea of investing in that life well lived. It's very, very important for our thriving and our long-term well-being. But of course, we actually need a balance. I tell all my students that I wish them a life of eudaimonic happiness with a lot of hedonic happiness along the way. It's not an either or, it's really a both and. Yet in Western culture, I don't know, we tend to kind of separate these things, that hedonic happiness, that pleasure is bad, that sacrifice is always good, and we kind of get a little bit tied up around these ideas of happiness. The Aztecs, however, going, in the way, we're still in the Wayback Machine, but in a totally different context, the Aztecs had a different definition of happiness even than Aristotle. The Aztecs talked about happiness as more as that duality, as that balance of harmonizing both the body, the mind, nature, and the idea of community and social purpose. And I really love this definition of happiness as a balance, because what they say is that happiness then is not that joyful state only, but the duality of joy and pain, the slips and slides, the ups and downs of life. And it really is, as one of the comments said, is really about acceptance. It is really about that, that having enough, that balance, that yin and that yang. And in fact, that's something that we're seeing talked about a fair amount coming out of the Nordic countries as well, which are consistently labeled among the happiest countries in the world. So there are many different definitions of happiness, but in social science research, we like to define things in a way that we can measure. Obviously, that seems like a really good idea. So one of the studies that was done over the many years is sort of known as the pencil experiment, or a test of what's called the Duchenne smile. And so here's the way it goes. And since it's a webinar, I can't see you, but you can see me. So here we go. It's going to be very silly. I'm going to grab this pen right here, and I'm going to put it in my teeth, like so. All right, you see me? I look totally normal, right? But as I do that, I am forcing a Duchenne smile, right? You can see my mouth come up. Now, if I put the pen between my lips, we don't want to do that, because then I would frown, and that's sad. So I want to put it between my teeth and smile. Researchers find that when people force a Duchenne smile just by putting a pencil or pen between their teeth, they find cartoons that they look at to be funnier than if they weren't forcing that Duchenne smile. And so from that, over the last couple decades, people have suggested, well, really, you just need to turn your frown upside down to be a little bit happier. Just put a smile on it and everything will be okay, right? So everyone's encouraging us to do this. You can try it if you'd like. No one can see you, so you can be as silly as you want. Now, here's the challenge with this, though. When meta-analyses were done on this study, as much as we want this to work, and as much as it does work in terms of making a cartoon funnier, the challenge is this does not work when it comes to long-term happiness and well-being. It's not to say that putting a smile on things isn't sometimes a really good idea and doesn't help us get out of a funk sometimes. However, the idea that we can just force ourselves to be happy, that we can just be positive all the time, is something that is kind of all out there in the self-help literature maybe, but really not true. Instead, really what we are looking for is something more meaningful. And so lots of researchers have been talking about various formulas for happiness. And I want to propose one of them to you, and I'll propose others. But one of the formulas for happiness is a mixture of pleasure and satisfaction equals a life of happiness and well-being. And I'm seeing a bunch of people in the comments saying it does actually make me a little bit happier to put a pencil or pen between my teeth. You know what? It totally makes me a little bit happier as well. And I love it too. I think, by the way, that the reason why it does that is because we are adding a little joy and levity in our lives, and we're not being so serious. In fact, what we're injecting into our lives here is a little bit of pleasure, right? It's a little bit of fun. And this kind of pleasure, this kind of hedonic happiness really is something that is very important in all of our lives. But so is that more serious kind of contentment, of joy, of investment, of accomplishment and positive relationships. So one formula of the good life is that it is a mix of pleasure and satisfaction. All right, so that is one possible formula that you can think of. But research has also said that that all of these formulas that only focus on you as the individual, that's not enough either. The single biggest secret to living a happy life, according to research, it is the quality of your relationships. So we can put pens in our mouths and smile. We can do everything that we can as individuals, and that is certainly important. But what we want to do is to reach out and invest in our communities, to invest in our relationships, to be pro-social and engage with our families, our friends, folks we haven't talked to in a while. In fact, even to engage in webinars like this, where we know that we are part of a community of dreamers who are coming together to invest in their future well-being. So when we are part of a community, when we invest in our relationships, that also tends to make us as individuals happier. So if we say that a formula for happiness is pleasure plus satisfaction, part of the satisfaction comes from the pleasure of being with others. Humans are very much social animals. Isolation is fatal. We were not meant to be alone. We are meant to gather together. So that secret of the Harvard happiness study, it's not really so big of a secret. It is that people matter and that relationships matter, and none of this really can happen in isolation. So as we move on to this second part, you might say, now wait, you said that you were going to define happiness in part one. This is really the challenge. I can't define happiness for you. But what I can do is propose various ways that you can test in your own life what makes you happy. And what I can do is encourage for you to think about prosocial behavior and relationships, to think about things that are going to bring you lasting satisfaction. And yes, to make sure that you have pleasure and joy in your life, such that you are smiling a little bit more. Those are all elements of a happy life. Now, when you can figure out what it is that brings that joy and happiness in your life, and then you sort of think, okay, great, I want more of it. Well, how do you get more of it? Can you buy it? Does more money equal more happiness? This is an age-old question. And it is really one that people study a lot. In fact, I am seeing in the comments that John says his son is actually doing his senior thesis on the concept of can money buy happiness. So this is hitting home. Oh, John, thank you for telling me that. That is wonderful. So really, this is an age-old question, and one that I absolutely wish people would talk about more. As John says, not having money equals unhappiness. Excellent. We are going to get there. We're going to get there. So this is a question a lot of us care a lot about. Okay. The answer, of course, I mean, I'm an academic, right? So I'll make any answer complicated, but the answer truly here is complicated. Back in the 1970s, an academic named Richard Easterlin coined what has now been called the Easterlin paradox. And what he says is that money, up until a certain point, does maximize your happiness and well-being. But after a certain point, after a certain income, more money does not lead to more happiness. And the number that he proposed is actually quite low. He said that for a family of 4, it is a sort of an entry-level incomes for a dual earner family. Now, this Easterlin paradox has been tested and retested. People have criticized it for decades. While Easterlin has always stood behind it, what researchers are now saying is, it depends really on how you measure happiness, and it depends on what you are talking about in terms of where people spend their money over the basic needs. So if you measure happiness just on basic needs, then Easterlin may be correct. But more money, if spent properly, can allow you to spend your money to make your life more joyful, to support your relationships better, and can help you spend in keeping with your values in a way that could, in fact, maximize your well-being. I'm seeing so many comments here. I love this. A quote this morning: happiness is not something ready-made, it comes from your own actions. Oh yes, that's from the Dalai Lama. Yes, and that money eliminates stressors, totally true. And yes, as Sharon says, I've been to very poor countries where people are happy, but what they do have is community. In the US, our communities have disappeared a great deal. Oh, these are all such absolutely good points that I want to hit on. And that money buys access, which can reduce stress and increase the perception of happiness. Ah, yes, money is connected with power. It is connected with access and privilege. And sometimes it can be connected with greater access to community, but we don't always use it that way. And if we use it to isolate ourselves, as we often do in all sorts of ways in the United States, then that can undermine our happiness. So what I want to propose to you is that there are several pitfalls that you can acknowledge that we're all sort of be tripped up by in our lives, and then hope to avoid if you are trying to use your money to maximize your well-being. And so I want to list a couple of these pitfalls. And as I do, you may say to yourself, oh man, that totally describes me. Don't worry, they all describe me too. They all describe all of us, which is why there are such common behavioral pitfalls. However, if you can acknowledge them and see them as you are sort of teetering on the edge of them, then you can make choices. And I'm going to talk about some of those choices that you can make, some behavioral changes that can actually really help you in terms of using your money to maximize your well-being. Because again, we all have limited money. Some of us more limited than others, some of us more seemingly unlimited than others. It's still a matter of using those limited resources in keeping with our values, because also no matter how much money we all have the same amount of time in the day, and none of us are going to live forever. We all have a finite life here on Earth. So how do we maximize our well-being? Oh yes, there are so many good, oh look at that. John made a very funny comment. He says, more money leads to more pencils. More pencils in your teeth lead to more smiles. Oh, this is good. This is great fun for me. I mean, I honestly, more webinars lead to more happiness for me. All right. So let's talk first about pitfall number one, which is the hedonic treadmill. Perhaps you have heard this, this expression before. It is the idea that we are all on a treadmill of success and wanting, where in fact we are running, 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 but we never actually get that carrot that is out there because we're basically just running to stand still. The hedonic treadmill is that as we get more income, as we get more success, we tend to get used to it and we want more and feel that we need more to get the same benefit from whatever it is that we have. It's also kind of, you can think of it as the hedonic plateau effect and hedonic adaptation, that we get used to stuff, we get bored with what we've got, and then we want more. So this is one of the first pitfalls that we all fall into, which is that we tend not to appreciate what we do have because we see someone who wants more, and because what we have is, I don't know, rather routine. It's mundane. Now, if you think back to your younger self would probably be very, very pleased to have some of the comforts that you have right now. And yet, it's sort of hard to think about that. I mean, you can kind of think about that in the abstract, and it's wonderful to write in a gratitude journal and all that. But then you say, okay, still, I want more. So perhaps another formula for success, knowing that we all fall into this hedonic adaptation, hedonic treadmill trap, is what you have divided by what you want. Now, this fabulous formula, I have to credit to Arthur Brooks, who is a professor at Harvard and writes a fabulous column on the good life for The Atlantic. And he kind of defined the formula for happiness as what you have divided by what you want. And he said, so what you can do in life to maximize your happiness is you can increase what you have. Certainly, you can always try to increase what you have, or you can try to decrease what you want. And if you decrease what you want, what you have becomes greater. Now, that is fine advice for those who have enough, but it's also advice that can be seen as sort of callous and pulling the ladder up, behind you for those who, in fact, are trying to make more, earn more, and trying to get to a place where they feel like they do have enough. So I'm careful with this advice, but when we present any of these formulas, you have to think about where you are in your life and which of these formulas is right for you. So this is a formula, what you have divided by what you want. Pitfall number two is quite related to that. And as John asks, is the hedonic treadmill just greed? Well, when we get to this, this next one, we can really kind of dive into that. So in a time of affluence, we have more choices than ever before. Any of you who have tried to buy a new pair of jeans, or tried to buy cereal, or really just about anything at any large store recently, we know that when we go down any of these aisles, we have tons and tons of choices. But as research has found over the years, more choices do not always mean more satisfaction and more happiness. There's a famous experiment by the Professor Ian Garr, it's the jam experiment, where folks come to a grocery store and some folks are offered 21 different types of jam to try, like, strawberry, raspberry, peach, and mango, kiwi, banana, whatever, all these different kinds of jams. And then researchers see whether they buy any of them. Then another group of people are offered only 3 types of jams. And then researchers see whether they buy them, any of them. And it turns out that people are much more likely to buy one of those jams when only 3 jams are offered, rather than when there are 21 jams offered. And this is because we get paralyzed by choice. It's called the paradox of choice. The paradox of choice is that more choices in our lives do not always make us more happy. What can we do about this in our everyday lives? Well, we can make second-order decisions. We ourselves can try to limit the choices that we have to make or even get to make in a day. So, for example, you can take the same route to work every day. So you don't even have to think about it. You don't have to think about, did I take the right shortcut? Am I doing the right thing? You can, say, get married, have the same partner. So you know who you are spending your life and your time with. There are many second order commitments that we make in our lives that in fact can not limit us, but free us up to live more fully and do other things. So, for example, when I go to buy a pair of jeans, I do not go and take 100 pairs of jeans into the dressing room. No, I find a nice sales lady and say, hi, I'm here to buy a pair of jeans. I promise you I will buy a pair of jeans. Here's my size. Here's what I look like. You can look at me. I'll be in the dressing room. Would you just bring me 3 pairs of jeans and I will buy one of them? And inevitably, the poor sales lady is totally confused until I explain to her that I study this and really this is what I want her to do. And she and I laugh and have a really fun time doing this. I only try on 3 pairs of jeans and guess what? I buy a pair and I don't look back. And this has transformed my shopping experience. I encourage you to try it, not just with jeans, but you can try it with any of the brands that are sort of overwhelming to you. Anything that you do to streamline and minimize this, this paradox of choice will turn you from a maximizer into a satisficer. And when we do this, we actually free ourselves up to think about things that are much more important to us. Here's another big one. Newsflash, materialistic values will not make you happy. Okay, you totally know this. However, here's the thing. We do it anyway. What we tend to think of is that more stuff or fame or money or power is going to make people like us more, love us more, that we will finally feel good about ourselves if people love us. And we'll finally be happy that there is something that we can buy that is going to fill that aching hole inside of us. I know you want to say that that doesn't apply to you, but it does. It applies to all of us. And when it's late at night and we're scrolling on Instagram, you know, we do think maybe, just maybe, if I buy this, it will fix it. And this is totally, totally human nature. But the challenge with this is that retail therapy, I ask everyone has engaged in retail therapy. The challenge with retail therapy is that it does not actually fix the thing that we are looking for. So here's this concept of the loneliness loop, which I think is really quite powerful when it comes to all of our consumer experiences and really even our online experiences whenever we disconnect from our family and friends in the world around us and turn to our screens. So it starts with like you're feeling isolated and anxious and maybe having a bad day. Maybe you've just had a fight with a loved one. I don't know. So what you then end up wanting to do is shop. Now, sometimes you are actually shopping for a thing, but maybe what you're doing is playing a video game or otherwise sort of tuning out and dissociating from the world around you. The choice to do that, what that ends up doing is what we then think, oh, okay, this is going to make us feel better. And what's really kind of interesting about shopping is that when you buy a product, initially you do get a surge of feeling better. So when I buy some random product on Instagram that I think this is totally going to be the one that is going to change my life, for a minute or two, maybe even 15 minutes after I buy the thing, I'm like, this is great. I have solved my problems. It's going to arrive. Life is going to be good. I imagine this good, wonderful life ahead of me. And then it arrives, and I realize it is just a thing that is usually not as advertised and is not going to solve my problems. And then I do a couple things. First of all, we tend to blame ourselves why was I so silly as to buy this thing? Or it didn't work for me because I did it wrong and it's my fault. And then we realize, gosh, now I have less money and I have wasted this thing. But what we don't tend to think about is the bigger opportunity cost, which is while doing all of these things, what we didn't do was reach out to a close family member, to a friend, to somebody to talk to deepen a relationship with. Because the thing isn't going to love us back. The solution, the video game, all of these distractions aren't actually going to fill the ache that we have. Now, it's totally understandable why we do this, because when we're feeling anxious and isolated and weird, we don't want to reach out in relationship with others. But this is exactly what we need to feel better. Materialism is not wanting things. Things are not the problem. Materialism is when we value things more than relationships. Materialism is when we value things more than people. And that's the concept that is so toxic to our well-being. So I am all about buying the nice things that you want if you have the resources to do so. But make sure that you're investing your time and energy in human relationships, in people, and in your community, because that's the thing that's going to really bring you the happiness. So I've offered a little bit of advice on how to sort of avoid some of these big pitfalls, but I want to really give you 5 more actual research-based tips on how you can use your limited resources to buy happiness. All right. So the first one may seem a little counterintuitive because I just said that we're going to buy happiness, right? But the first one is to be thrifty. And this is not exactly what you think it means. So thrift is one of those awesome words. It's actually among my favorite words because it is totally misunderstood in 2024 in the United States. Thrift is not about being stingy. Thrift is not about accumulating a lot of money. Thrift is actually making the wisest use of all of your resources in keeping with your values, not just for you, but for the greater social good. Thrift is honestly a really beautiful concept, and it comes from the word thrive. It comes from the same root as the word thrive, to grow. Any of you who are gardeners out there know about this idea of thriving and growing and making the wisest use of all of the resources of sun and soil and water and air. Being thrifty with your resources is the same thing. It's about making the wisest use of all that you have in keeping with your values. Thrift at its core is not about being a miser. Thrift is about generosity, and it is about spending in keeping with your values, what matters to you. This to me is really, really important. Like, this is such an important concept to me because to understand the idea of consuming happiness really goes hand in hand with the idea of thrift. Because when we talk about buying happiness, I'm not really talking about buying the latest gadget that's going to make you happy for 20 minutes. I'm talking about investing in your well-being, in your long-term well-being, and in the well-being of your community, for your loved ones, for future generations. That's about planting, growing, thriving, and that's about generosity and values. So when we think about thrift, we often think about living simply. We think about spending in ways that matters to us, but really there are practical elements to this. And you can think about it as that intersection between the money that you have and what you care about, right? And so in the middle there is your plan for thrift. Now, often when we think about thrift, we think, I don't know, it is just not a fun and sexy word, right? thrift seems like, you've got to be very virtuous at all points. And yes, it was one of the virtues. Frugality was one of the virtues that Benjamin Franklin worked on all the time, and it certainly is a virtue. But let's be real, it is totally okay to shop. Thrift does not mean not shopping. It means spending in keeping with your values. So how do we do that? I want to take you through a little bit of an exercise on how to do that, because this is something that applies to all of us. We are all consumers in the marketplace right now. So here's the exercise. The first exercise is to think about your core values. Now, this is a tough question, and so I'm going to first define for you what a value is. Values are these things that are behind everything that we do, all the choices that we make. Your values brought you here to this webinar. Your values really are why you are here. Your values are why you've chosen the job and the partner and everything that you've chosen in your life. And yet, because they are so fundamental to us, we often don't think about them on a daily basis. So these are ideas, beliefs, concepts that guide your behavior, that motivate you to act in a particular way. When we live our values, it is about making choices. Okay, so values help us make decisions. They empower our choices. They guide us in terms of everything that we do. What's challenging, though, is that we may have values that don't always go together on a given day. So, for example, you may have a work obligation and a family obligation on the same day. How do you decide which one to do? It's not that you don't value your work or value your family, but those values are colliding and you have to make a choice. So when we think about our values, sometimes we can't do all of them all at once. We try to juggle, but we have to make choices. Our values, though, guide the choices we make in life in general, and it's okay sometimes to prioritize some values over others in a particular moment. I like to think about it as a balance, a sort of, if we think about walking as a controlled falling exercise, right? As you shift from one leg to another, you're kind of going through the motions, and the only reason why you don't fall down is because you just keep moving through. Our values are sort of like that as well. As we just kind of move through, things, we can value one thing more than another in a particular day, and then we value something else a little bit higher the next day, and it all balances out. So all of our values get the center stage that they want. When it comes to our spending, though, we really need to know what those core values are. And so this is a list of from Shalom Schwartz's Universal Values Index, and this list is kind of fun because when I look at it, I'm like, great, I love all of these. Can I take all of these as my values? And no, you can theoretically. It's just that you can't say that they're your core values, because you can't prioritize all of them all at once. You've heard this time and again, right? That if you prioritize everything, you prioritize nothing. Unfortunately, that's true. So what I would encourage you to do right now is to pick 3 core values that you would like to guide your spending right now. Okay? And think about those core values. Just pick 3. And by the way, they don't have to be on this list. You can come up with a different value. But I will note that there is one word on this list that one word that is not on this list that is worth noting: happiness. Happiness isn't on the list of core values. Why? Well, that's because happiness is a byproduct of living your values. It's not a value itself. All right? So happiness is not on the list, but living in keeping with your core values hopefully will bring you to a sense of contentment and happiness. So think about some core values and jot down 3 of them. Trust me, it's worth it. Jot down 3 of them. In fact, put a couple of them in the chat. Put a couple of them in the chat so people can see what some core values are. Oh, lovely. And folks are putting up other values decks for further exploration. Thank you for doing that. The thing is, this is not even Schwartz's full universal values table because it doesn't fit on one slide. And I absolutely recommend all sorts of values practices. There are ones from the University of Pennsylvania and Positive Psychology Institutes. There are all sorts of values explorations that you can do. Highly recommend doing them. And Christina has posted another book, I think, off of a values deck or a card deck off of Amazon. And okay, good. Oh, I'm seeing all sorts of good values popping up. Absolutely. All right. Inner harmony, curiosity, unity with nature, love, self-respect, health, experience, striving, health, self-discipline, friendship, creativity, helpfulness. Oh man, I love this so much because these are all inspiring to me, right? Because the idea of having values that we are actually living in our everyday life is really, is really powerful because those are the building blocks of this happiness and well-being, spirituality, leadership, creativity, security, freedom, giving. These are beautiful. All right. So with these, here is a challenge. You knew this one was coming. All right, take a deep breath. So you've got your 3 core values that you most identify with, and we'll do it maybe around spending because that's where we're going with this challenge. Now, think back to your recent purchases. What are the 3 to 5 things you most recently purchased? And yes, your morning coffee counts if you bought it out. So what are the last 3 to 5 things that you purchased? And then the challenge here now is to compare those lists and ask yourself if you are spending in keeping with your values. Now, I can't see you guys, so I'm just going to like squirm for you on the screen because every time I do this exercise, I do a little bit of, I do a little bit of squirming. Because I can rationalize just about anything that I spend money on these days because I've done this exercise on myself a lot. And yet, when I'm honest, I'm not always spending in keeping with my values. And when we don't spend in keeping with our values, then we have to ask ourselves one of 2 questions. Do I need to change my spending and purchasing behavior? Or am I actually listing values that are more aspirational or somebody else's values and not actually my values? So when there's a cognitive dissonance, you can either change your behavior or you can change your stated values. And there's no judgment one way or another, but it's an important thing to look at because when the way we spend our limited resources really matters. And if we keep saying that we are not where we want to be in life, and yet we are acting in a way that is not in keeping with our stated values, that may have something to do with it. Oh, look, okay, wait, so I'm seeing toys, I'm seeing running and walking shoes, books, lots of books, a cookbook, plants for peace and beauty. Need more self-discipline to stop gardening so much. Watch bands, a Mother's Day gift. Oh, good. A race registration. These are all fabulous things to spend on. Now, here's the interesting part. Just because they are like seemingly fabulous things to spend on, they also may not be in keeping with your values. It's wild. Just because something sounds good to one person or like a splurge to another person, it doesn't matter. It's about your values and whether they are in keeping with your values. And that's why this is such an individual exercise. So one of the things that I do, and I find this a kind of a good example because it's right up at the edge of materialism and values. I really love clothes. I do. I love fashion. I love clothes. But I don't like spending a tremendous amount of money on them. So for the last 7 years, I have done Rent the Runway Unlimited. And so I rent all of these designer clothes and I wear all these fabulous things. And I love it because I wear these really expensive things. I wear them once or twice and then I send them back. So I spend money on a monthly subscription, but I don't buy the clothes. Is that materialistic? Is that spending in keeping with my values? Which one is it? Well, for me, I believe it is spending in keeping with my values because I value presentation of self. It makes me feel good. I do a lot of talks. It's something that matters to me, and I really enjoy it. I get real pleasure from it. However, I could have a different value set that would be doing it because I wanted people to think a certain way about me, because I wanted people to think that I actually owned these clothes, that I wanted to be flexing, as my teenagers would say, as a way of saying, look at all the stuff that I have. If I were doing it for those reasons, yeah, that would be materialistic, and that would actually be harming my inner self, not spending in keeping with my values. So even though I'm not buying the clothes themselves and I'm spending less money, a thrifty purchase must be in keeping with your values. Just because you spend less on it does not mean that it is in keeping with your values. It needs to matter to you to be thrifty and to be worth it to you. So this is where all of these purchases you can really think about. On the flip side, sometimes you might want to buy something that's very expensive. In fact, that is luxury, designer, that you've wanted for so long, that you've saved up for. If that is something that really matters to you and is important to you, then that can be a thrifty purchase, right? That can be something that is in keeping with your values and matters to you. So I have no judgments about the way people spend because I can't know everybody's individual values. What I can say is that you will be happier and more thrifty and more purposeful, and you will be spending your money in a way that will maximize your well-being when you spend in keeping with your values. And one way to spend in keeping with your values is to spend less on things and more on shared experiences. Now, you've probably also heard this a bit, but I want to give you some of the research as to why this is. We tend to get bored of stuff easily. I don't know if you've noticed. I know I certainly do. You buy a thing, it seems like the coolest thing ever for the first, I don't know, week, maybe. And then it just becomes this other thing that you've got, your new phone, your new computer. It just becomes another thing. We get bored of stuff really easily. The other reason it's better to spend on experiences rather than things is because it's much harder to compare my experience and your experience. It's like comparing apples and oranges. If we both go on a vacation, I mean, maybe yours was fancier and ritzier, but did you really have a better time? Who knows? It's harder to compare those experiences. It's especially harder to compare experiences because we are what we experience, and these become the stories that we tell of who we are. When we meet somebody, we don't say, "Hi, I'm Christine. I have an iPhone and an Apple computer, and I drive a Subaru," right? Like, that's not how we introduce ourselves. No, we talk about our experiences. We talk about the things that we do. We talk about all the activities and the passions that we have. So experiences are what are a part of who we are, in part because experiences are social. And this is, I'm seeing this. I'm seeing this. Sharon saying, my grandkids tell people that I'm the grandma that gives them experiences, not stuff. I really hate shopping, but I love experiences with my family and friends. Sharon, you are absolutely on the right track. And your grandkids are also learning something really important, because not only are they learning about the idea of spending on experiences, they're getting the gift of you. It is, buying stuff is, I think, easier to sort of like push a button online, but to say, I am going to invest in you and in my relationship with you, that is the invaluable gift. It's the gift of your time, of your love, and it brings together that relationship bond. So I am all in favor of spending your money on shared experiences so that the value is far greater than the money spent on the thing itself. And there is an entire economy, the experience economy, that has grown up around this. And so retailers know that, people are willing to spend on experiences. Some of them can be over the top expensive, and you don't need to do that, because some of the best experiences are ones that don't even work out very well. In my family, we talk often about the itchy and scratchy hike. It was a hike that we took during the pandemic, somewhere in central Wisconsin. I don't even know where we were. It rained, and there were these plants that scratched all of us on our legs, and we all burst out in red hives. And my son, who was probably like 4 at the time, was crying, and we were all a mess. The whole thing was an absolute disaster. We still, for some reason, joke about that, look back on that, and talk about the experience of the itchy and scratchy hike as this memorable bonding experience within our family. So that was a free experience, with the benefit of the hives as a added extra, and yet the memory lives on. So spending on experiences rather than things can be really important. Now, step number 3 is make it a treat. Make it a treat. So this is a kind of interesting, an interesting one. We tend to value things that are scarce. What that means is when we don't have a lot of something, or when we feel that a lot of something doesn't exist, we tend to give it more value. It's also called the diamond water paradox. We need water to live. We do not need diamonds to live. And yet diamonds are more scarce than water, and so we value them more. So Culver's, while not making diamonds, knows this very well. And I don't know if any of you from Wisconsin looking at this image know what this is, but Culver's, for those of you around the world, is a fast food chain in the area that makes this delicacy called the Culver's Curder Burger. And that is a fried cheese curd on top of a cheeseburger. Or I don't know, maybe it's just a hamburger and the cheese curd is the cheese. Anyway, it is quite a Wisconsin. Oh, yes, Jenny lives in Sauk City, the home of the original Culver's. Have you had the Curder Burger? You have to tell us all about the Curder Burger if you've had it, because I have not had this thing. And the reason I have not had it is because it's one of those limited time only things. It came out sort of as an April Fool's joke, and then it became so popular because it was scarce. People line up everywhere for the Curder Burger. They line up for the Curder Burger because you can't get it all the time. It's scarce, thus we see it as more valuable. Well, I do the same thing, but I have put this into my own life, and this is the little bit of advice here about making it a treat. So I used to make my coffee at home, and then I got a little bit of extra spending money, and then I started working in a different place, and so then I started going to Starbucks on my way to work, and I started getting a latte, and oh my gosh, it was such a treat to get a latte on the way to work in the morning. But then I got used to it. And then that latte that was just such a treat became my morning coffee. I didn't think about it. I just did it. I pre-ordered it. I got the coffee. I went, and it was just part of my morning routine. It wasn't pleasurable anymore. And yet it was also like a $4 unpleasurable. I mean, it was still good, but it was just like not moving the dial for me. It was just a thing that I did. And I realized, oh, no. I want this to be a treat. So what did I do? I cut it out. I cut it out 4 days a week. So 4 days a week, I made my coffee at home. And 1 day a week, on my way to work, I could get a latte. And let me tell you, Starbucks talks about that first sip feeling. I got that first sip feeling back. Why? Because I added a little bit of voluntary renunciation into my life. There are things that we do that are awesome, but sometimes we need to make them a treat to savor them. And this is really one of those challenges of affluence, challenges of choices, where actually pulling back and saying no sometimes to things can actually make us enjoy the things that we have even more. So if you can think about something that you take for granted that you once thought was really special, can you think about a way to make it a treat in your life? I'm not like talking about being, super mean to yourself and denying yourself of something basic. But for me, this idea of making it a treat has actually added a fair amount of pleasure and joy into my life because I'm saving money, so I'm spending more in keeping with my values. Much cheaper to make my coffee at home 4 days a week. And then when I have the treat, I actually value it more. So you can consider that one. Step 4, this is another one that is one that we all fall into, and yet if we could do it just a little bit more, it would maximize our well-being. And this is a bit of advice about loving your future self. So we have all been there. We know that we have work to do, but we don't want to do it right now. In fact, we would like to just watch one episode of our show on Netflix. But that one episode of show on our Netflix turns into 2, which turns into 3, which turns into revenge binge watching because we had worked hard all day. We don't get any sleep. And then in the morning, we realize that we have all of this work to do. So this is called hyperbolic discounting, also known as the yes, damn problem. And the way hyperbolic discounting works is that we think that a reward closer to us is more valuable than a larger reward farther away because we discount the future. We discount our future selves. And there are many, many ways that we do this. People study this. People are more likely to say that they will take a smaller amount of money now than wait and take a larger amount of money later. People are much more likely to want the cupcake now rather than the potential future promise of, that beach body later. The challenge with hyperbolic discounting, of course, is that the future is uncertain. So we don't know that we're going to get more money later. And we definitely don't know that we're going to get the beach body later if we don't eat the cupcake now. So this idea of sort of, take pleasure as it comes is an evolutionary mandate for us. We have evolved to eat the sweet thing now because we never know when it's going to come next. And yet, in our affluent society, lots of abundance around, there's a lot of temptation to enjoy now and to discount the future. Here's the thing. If we invest in our future selves, then we will really reap the rewards because we don't have to think about our future selves as somebody separate than our current selves. There's fascinating research that shows that there are those of us who speak futured languages, like English, and then futureless languages, like Chinese, for example, where there's no the future is not something that is stressed. Everything is always spoken in the present, and it turns out that we tend to save more money. We tend to engage in less risky behavior if we speak a futureless language. If we are always thinking in the present, than if we are folks like us Americans who speak in terms of a separation between us and our future selves. Now, we don't even have to think about retirement savings for this. We can think about this just in terms of 3 months from now. So on the academic schedule, we've wrapped up our academic semester, and now people are looking and planning toward the fall, which is great. So somebody says to me, "Hey, Christine, I'd like you to do this for me in September." I say, "Sure, my September is totally open. Absolutely, I'd be happy to do that for you." Right. I say that to like 20 people, and September comes and I'm pulling my hair out. I have no idea why my schedule is so busy. Well, that's because previous Christine engaged in hyperbolic discounting and discounted the time of future Christine. You do this, I do this, we all do this. But this is a way, so this is a suggestion to invest in your future self. Yes, I mean, people tell you all the time about retirement savings. I totally get it. But that is one way that you invest in your future self. The idea of ensuring your home, your dreams, all of the things that matter to you is an investment in your future self. The idea of going to the doctor and engaging in mammograms and colonoscopies and preventative health visits, as awful as they can be, that's an investment in your future self. Now, none of this is guaranteed, but your future self will thank you for this kind of investment. Oh yes, I'm seeing folks saying, yes, invest in your future self. And we are in a constant battle with our primal self and what might be longer term healthier choices. Yeah, we really are. We really are in that battle. And if we can see it maybe less as a battle and more as an evolutionary tendency to try to keep ourselves safe in a world where that kind of safety is more guaranteed than other kinds of threats that are sort of coming at us. And so the greater threat to us is, in fact, the idea of not investing in our future selves. And so thinking about it that way. All right. Number 5 is another one where we get to really kind of engage together in some kind of fun applied exercises. So I am a proud board member of an organization called Seek Safely, and it is all about how we can engage in the self-help industry and in self-transformation and in behavior change in a way that is backed by research and not harmful to our minds, to our bodies, to our health and well-being. And the reason I'm so passionate about this, I did my doctoral dissertation on the self-help industry, but over the last decade or so, the wellness industry has just been booming, and people are spending more and more money on more and more remedies, most of which probably don't do what they say they're gonna do. And I have always been in the challenging and potentially less popular role of talking about what the research says about these things, which does not offer the quick fixes that all of us really want. And I get it, we do want quick fixes. It would truly be awesome if there was a product sold on your Instagram reels that would actually solve your problems. I still look for it, I totally do. But it's not, this idea just does not materialize usually. So there's a lot of snake oil out there. There are a lot of promises, and trying things is not a problem as long as you have the resources to do it and as long as what you are trying is safe. And so the way that I advise people to seek safely is to seek with a purpose mindset. And this is something that I define as using your gifts in keeping with your values to make a positive impact on those that you care about most. So as you try to seek a better version of you, ask yourself, what am I good at? What do I care about? And who do I want to help? Who do I want to do all of this with? And if you engage in this buying of happiness, if you engage in this seeking of well-being in that way, then you are asking the questions and personalizing anything you do in a way that really can be quite healthy for you. Do we all need some behavior change? Absolutely. We could all improve, me included, and I'm always trying to do so. Yet, since there is no quick fix, embracing wellness and the self-improvement culture with this purpose mindset of knowing yourself is really important. So how do we do this? Well, this is something that I have been doing for quite some time. And, and so as an intro to this, I want to play a little game with you because just in case, I've been talking at you for a while in this webinar, and I want to make sure everybody is awake. So here we go. We're going to do 3 truths and a lie, which is going to lead into potentially the last thing you'd think of happening in a webinar. All right, so which is the truth? Sorry, which is the lie? All right, number 1 is I just celebrated my 25th college reunion. Number 2 is I'm from Chicago, Illinois. Number 3 is I have my own pop song. Number 4 is my motto is not for school, but for life we learn. So which one is not true? Oh, a 25-hour reunion. Yeah, there should have been a TH in there. It's my 25th college reunion. All right, excellent. Oh, interesting. So there's like all of these, it's all over the map. But thank you for playing along. Oh, wait, some of you already know the answer. Okay, all right, thank you for playing along, folks, because the lie is that I'm from Chicago, Illinois. I am not from Chicago, Illinois. I am from New York City, and which is which is kind of exciting because that means that, yes, I did just, by the way, celebrate my 25th college reunion. It was awesome. It was so amazing. More than 600 classmates came back, maybe even 700. It was wild. My motto is not for school, but for life we learn. But it's number 3 that you care about the most, I think, which is that I have my own pop song. Long story how this happened, but I am so passionate about this idea of personalizing purpose and this purpose mindset in a way that can be applicable in people's everyday lives that I partnered with some folks to take my own purpose statement, my own purpose mindset, and put it into a pop song. So I am going to play it for you. I'm going to put up the words for it. And what's kind of fun about this is that I am now working on an AI-based opportunity so that in future versions of this talk, you can hopefully make your own version of this too. So here we go. Are you ready? Can you hear it?
Purpose-based commitments.
We're all producers of our own life movies. See the big picture, what's important to me.
Success happens to you. Significance happens through you. Big ideas worth doing. Answers worth pursuing. What's it all mean? Can you help me, Christine? Tell me again. I know I'm living my purpose when I see faces in the crowd, connecting with my speeches to the laughter of my children, playing on the beaches, toasting to our friendships and friends. At my table read letters from my students who say they've been enabled to the plane roar. Waves crashing on the shore, my children run ahead as they play and explore. I say you got this, sister, you totally rock the show. Arms reach the target by pulling back then letting go. What matters most to you, the why is your fulfillment, how to make it happen, purpose-based commitments. I know my values, I know my gifts, I know my impact. It's time for a shift. What's it all mean? Can you help me, Christine? Tell me again. I know I'm living my purpose when I see faces in the crowd, connecting with my speeches, hear the laughter of my children, playing on the beaches, toasting to our friendships and friends. At my table read letters from my students who say they've been enabled to the plane roar. Waves crashing on the shore, my children run ahead as they play and explore. Say you got this, sister, you totally rock the show. Arms just reach the target by pulling back then letting go. Research to real life is my calling. Feel energized, proud and eager to keep going. Seneca discern, not for school, but for life we learn. See faces in the crowd, children playing on the beaches, toasting to our friendships and friends at my table. Read letters from my students who say they've been enabled and the playboy was crashing on the shore. Our children run ahead as they play and explore. I say you got this, sister. You totally rock that show. I'm just used to turning by pulling back. I see the faces in the crowd connecting with my speeches. Here's the laughter of my children playing on the beaches, toasting to our friendships and friends at my table. Read letters from my students who say they've been enabled and the playboy is crashing on the shore. My children run ahead as they play and explore. I say you got this, sister. You totally rock the show. I just wish you turkey by pulling back then letting go.
Well, thank you for letting me play that, because I can tell you that all of my children had a moment of mortification just now at school, and they had no idea why. Like their ears started burning and they thought, oh no, there's a disturbance in the force. My mother has done something terribly embarrassing. All right. So what was so joyful and fun for me about putting together that pop song was in part because I was taking my sense of purpose and expressing it in a way that was happy and action oriented and really sort of stating the things that I wanted to do that mattered to me. And so again, I'm really trying to figure out a way to do this such that there could be an AI pop song version of this for people to do in the future, because I think that'd be so cool. In the meantime, we are still in the realm of sort of a basic Mad Libs and fill in the blanks, but it is still kind of worth it because it's an investment in your future self. So here's what I'd like you to do. There are 5 questions, and this is where we're going to end. There are these 5 questions, and as we pull them together, my hope is that you're going to leave this webinar with a consuming happiness statement for your week ahead. And what's good about this is that when you leave this, hopefully you leave inspired, but I'd also like you to leave with a bit of an action plan of what you're going to do next. And so that's the purpose of this statement. So I'm going to take you through these. I'm going to take you through these questions, and we'll talk about them a little bit more. And hopefully, as we talk about them, you can put your thoughts in the chat as well. So the first question we've already talked about, right, is those values that you'd like to guide you. But you might think about 3 for this week upcoming. And oftentimes people have different values based on the different week because you're going to be doing different things, prioritizing different things. It doesn't mean you're a different person. It means you are going to be prioritizing a different set of values at that period. Then think about what joyful activities you might like to prioritize in the week ahead. And this really is this idea of infusing joy, some of that really meaningful, joyful fun into your life as you think about maximizing your resources. Think about who do you want to make time for? Because relationships matter so much in terms of our happiness and well-being. And then what are 3 ways that you can commit to investing in your future self? Because that future self matters now. That future self is going to thank you when the future comes round and you have made these investments. So we've done the values brainstorm, but you might want to think about this values brainstorm in terms of the week ahead. And if you want to jot some values in the comments, it is right now, for those who are watching live, it is Thursday. So you might even think about your values for the weekend ahead. Or if you'd like to think about it in terms of starting on Monday for the next work week ahead, think about what you're going to be doing, what matters to you, what are your values that you really want to prioritize. And you're going to list 3 of those. Then this is a really fun one. And for some of us, this can actually be kind of a challenging one. What are some of the joyful activities that you want to prioritize? When we think of joyful activities, we really think of want to experiences, not necessarily have to experiences. although there are some have-to experiences that we do that where we in fact can find joy. But think about the joyful activities that you want to make sure that you prioritize in your life. Whether it be taking an after dinner walk with your family, it doesn't have to be huge. Whether it's trying out a new recipe, whether it is whether it's checking out checking in on a friend or a relative who you haven't seen in a while, and looking over some old family albums. These don't have to cost money. They can, but they can also be over the top. One of my friends has a real joyful activity that I've been talking to her about all week. She is flying with her family to London to see the Taylor Swift Eras tour. That's like kind of an over-the-top joyful activity. And yet this has been such an amazing planning and joyful experience for her with her 2 daughters. So, you know, there are all sorts of things that you can do as you think about these joyful activities, but prioritize a couple. And who is it that you want to do things with? Who are the people, the groups that you care about most? These can be your family members, but they can also be members of your community, members of your work team. They can also be, you know, they can be ideas and causes that you very much want to invest in and invest your time and attention in. So who do you want to spend time with? Who do you want to positively impact? Because remember, my purpose mindset statement, my purpose mindset definition is about using your gifts in keeping with your values to make a positive impact on the people and causes that we care about most. So you can think about your gifts, but you can also think about that in terms of your joyful gifts and activities in keeping with your values to make a positive impact on the people and ideas and causes we care about most. And then this is the one where the rubber meets the road, really. Future me would like me to do what right now? To invest in a better future for me, because I'm me now and I'm me in 3 months. Now, this does not have to be 3 months from now. In fact, you could actually do me of next week. You could do me of next month. One of the things I used to do as a teenager was I would write a letter to myself for the next year. On January 1, I would write a letter to myself for January 1 of the next year. And this year, for the first time, I had my whole family do it with me. I hadn't done these letter things in a long time, but this January 1st, I have all of their letters, and I can't wait to open them, because they'll open them, but I can't wait for all of us to open them together on January 1st, 2025, because it'll be a sort of a blast from the past, a letter from our previous selves to our future selves, and then we can do it again. But this is the opportunity now to think about, maybe it's just yourself 1 week from now. What would yourself 1 week from now like you to commit to doing in the next week, so that you can invest in your future self? Now, if you're like me, I have a very, very long list of things that I would sort of like to do. You can't do all of them. Pick 3, pick 2, pick something, and make it a priority to just do that thing. And you can put it into a Mad Lib statement. I love these Mad Lib statements because they take daunting tasks like figuring out, you know, how to maximize our well-being and turn them hopefully into a pleasurable exploration of possibilities. So this Mad Lib statement is a way to put it together and take action. So I will spend my time, my talent, and my treasure in keeping with my values of, and then you write your values. And this week, I'm going to prioritize joyful activities like whatever it is that is going to bring you joy, so that you can really focus on the thriving and the well-being of those people and causes and groups and communities that you care about most. Above all, I'm going to invest in my future self by doing what? And really feel free to put these in the comments. I'm seeing some beautiful ones. To be more present when I spend time with my dad, instead of always being rushing for the next thing in my schedule. Oh, that is absolutely beautiful and so true for all of us. I recently learned of the passing of my dear friend, and I regret not checking in with her often. She passed exactly a month after the last time we communicated via email. I'm making a check-in round with some of those friends I have not seen in a while. Oh, that is so wonderful and a powerful reminder to all of us. That's why I read it out loud, because in fact, I'd like to put that on my consuming happiness list for the coming week. Those are the kinds of relationship building conversations and check-ins that are both meaningful to the person that we reach out to and so meaningful to us in the relationships that we form with them. So think about doing this exercise. Now, I know this is one of those exercises where it's much easier to just watch on the webinar rather than to actually put it into action yourself or write it down. But if you can get yourself to write this down and then put it up on your bathroom mirror and say, am I going to do this? That can inspire you to take the next step the week after. Because there's lots of research that shows that when you complete a small step, even like completing this worksheet here, when you complete a small step, it helps boost your self-efficacy so that you feel more confident about completing the next challenge in front of you. And I know that you can do this. You don't have to put all of these ideas into action all at once, but I really encourage you to pick and choose some of them to test out in your everyday life and see what works. Because you can choose to go just about anywhere from here. You can think about your formula for happiness. You can think about that sweet spot. Where's your balance between hedonic and eudaimonic, between pleasure and satisfaction? Or is it that idea of minimizing what you want or maximizing what you have? What steps can you take to avoid those 3 pitfalls that we talked about the hedonic treadmill? How can you make commitments to enhance your well-being? How can you prioritize those intrinsic values and relationships over materialistic urges? Or will you potentially take one of these 5 action steps as a way of maximizing your happiness? In fact, feel free to put that in the chat now that all 5 of these are up. Are there any? I would be very interested to know whether there are any of these 5 that are really speaking to you. Any of these 5 that that seem like they're the ones that you most want to test out. Because oh, make it a treat is coming up. Of shared experiences more than things. Oh, good. I'm glad to see that some of these are ones that people are going to put into action. Shared experiences. Yeah. So these are make it a treat. Those are really, those 2 seem to really be hitting home. The making it a treat and spending on shared experiences and loving my future self. Great. So yeah, so you get to pick, right? I mean, this is we're all an experiment of one. Really, there's no one size fits all on this. You get to pick which way you want to go from here. But I very much hope that that you will continue your journey. And if you want to learn more about this, I encourage you to listen to my Audible original 10 lecture series called Finding Your Purpose. As my friends say, it's really awesome. It's like having a conversation with me, but you can pause me at any time. So it's available for, if you have an Audible subscription already, it's just 1 credit, but it's free if you want to do an Audible free trial. And so then you can listen more. And one of my commitments is that I'm going to be posting more on LinkedIn as a way of kind of sharing a lot of these consuming happiness ideas in a way that can be useful to more people. because one of my purposes is translating this academic research to make a positive impact on the lives of others and to help real people use this in their everyday lives. So feel free to follow me on LinkedIn if you want to stay tuned for more of these tips. And finally, if you want free, they're totally free, I promise. Like nothing. You can free worksheets and downloading things like that consuming happiness statement or other purpose statement worksheets. Those are available on christinewhelan.com. So thank you so much for joining for this presentation, and I appreciate it, and I very much hope that you have a fabulous week of both hedonic happiness and eudaimonic happiness, of consuming happiness, and most of all, of a joyful life on purpose. And thank you so much for being with me this afternoon.